Hey Matt, how's it going?
I'm doing good. I love your background, dude. That's sick. I love that F1 car.
Oh, thank you so much. You an F1 fan
I,
yourself, or?
I watch it a little bit. I'm not a
Yeah.
fan of any of the teams, but I know all the people.
Big Verstappen fan, which is always a little bit controversial here in the UK, as you can probably guess.
Yeah,
But,
but oh yeah.
but no, it's awesome to speak to you. I'm a big fan of your work
Yeah.
and a lot I've seen you in. And obviously, this I think was your first time playing a real life figure with Roy. So, how did you
Yeah,
prepare and research for that? Because obviously, a lot different to something like The Walking Dead, for example.
of course. No, of course. Yeah. So the when the project got announced to me, I didn't know too much about it. And when I saw it was a true story, I was very intrigued. And when I kind of delved deeper into it, I was like, wow, this is very emotionally driven and scary in a lot of ways. So when I got approached about the role, I was like, do I really want to do something that holds this much weight? But after speaking with Burke and the whole creative crew about it, it's something I definitely wanted to do. I was inspired to do. I wanted to kind of put that story out in the world. And working with an amazing co-star with me with Brec Bassinger, I had to say yes. So getting to work with her and kind of delving into Roy Ducat's character and his real life stuff was a ton of fun, and I'm honored and glad I was able to do it.
Oh, fantastic. And yeah, you mentioned Breck there, and obviously you have some really pivotal, important scenes together, particularly, where with the bear attack. What was it like working with her, preparing for those and just
Yeah.
those more intense days on set?
So I actually when I got the role, we came out and did some fittings and stuff, and that's when I met her. And we clicked right away. We had chemistry on and off the screen, and actually our first scene was with the bear attack, which is I was hoping it would be kind of more of a casual scene, but no, it was straight in there, and the bear Spot, he was like a dog. He was super sweet. We couldn't get too close to him,
Yeah.
but from what we saw, he was the sweetest bear. Um, but no, yeah, getting to work with her on that, and I've always been terrified of bears.
Yeah.
I think I saw like a horror movie of a bear movie, and it scarred me as a kid. So working on this, I was like, I don't want to get close to a bear. Um, but yeah, no, working with her and kind of how would you play a bear biting into your back and scratching was stuff we kind of had to play with and rehearse with Burke. But Burke was so collaborative and great to work with on that.
Oh, amazing. And, just to get into Roy's head, he's trying to protect the woman he loves. As an audience member, you're thinking, how much is he trying to protect her, while fighting for his own survival as well. Such a kind of interesting thing to think about watching his story. But how much time did you kind of devote to that and try to just figure out what Roy was going through?
From when I booked it and read the script, I know that was such a pivotal scene in the movie. And what would you do as a human being with
Yeah.
this massive, bear coming up to you and your girlfriend? I mean, there's not really much you can do other than staying quiet and just praying, honestly. And it's such a terrifying thing that they actually went through. And that's kind of something where you kind of have to take a second and be like, wow, this is, we're making a movie and it's fun, and you're in Park City, Utah, in the mountains with an amazing cast and crew, but you got to really sit back and be like, okay, this really happened, and we got to do honor by them and kind of go through this scene, and it was really scary. It was really scary to be honest with you. Yeah.
Yeah, I can only imagine. And I know obviously the real attack took place in Montana. You were filming in Utah, but to be in
Mhm.
surroundings like that and to be out in the forest, that must help incredibly, I would think, for your performance and to really
Oh, of
dive into.
course.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, and the locations they chose were stunning. I mean, we were based in Park City, which is a ski town, and we would drive, I think, like 30 minutes, 40 minutes into the mountains where there was nobody. It was just all the animals, all the nature surrounding you, eating you up, and it was beautiful. And even when weren't filming, just to kind of take that in. If they had a scene before you and you were on set, you could just breathe in the nature. So I mean, it honestly it made it even scarier, especially the night scenes.
Yeah, absolutely. And you mentioned the bear, of course. I know you couldn't get up too close and personal for obvious
Yeah.
reasons, but to see that bear on set and to have it in the vicinity of where you were, how helpful was that to really again to dial into what Roy's going through in these more intense moments?
Yeah, I mean, well, we had scenes in the chalet where the bear is eating the trash,
Mm.
and just seeing how big it was, and the physicality. Obviously, you know how big bears are, but when you see it in person, it's a completely different thing. So I remember when I have a million videos on my phone. When I first saw it, I was like, "This is terrifying." And then we met the bear from a distance, per the rules, obviously. And then after doing that, going into that scene, you're like, "Oh my gosh!" Like, and they obviously didn't have the bear, close to us when we were filming the attack scene. But to have that in my memory of how big that bear is, obviously it's very friendly, but bears in the wild, some may not be, and it definitely added to the fear factor of that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think in a lot of ways, this film, obviously it's a drama, but there's some animal survivor kind of thriller elements to it, a
Mm-hmm.
little bit like Jaws. So was that
Yeah,
something you'd been looking for as an actor to kind of tackle this kind of story as
yeah, the
opposed to
horror.
original?
Yeah, I used to do a lot of horror stuff when I was young, very young, before I understood any of it. My first movie was Halloween 2 with
Yeah.
Michael Myers, and I had no idea, the gravity of that or anything like that. So kind of delving back into that um, was very interesting, and I think a lot of people kind of go into it watching it. Some might think it's a very horror movie where the bear's chasing and all these crazy fictional elements, but really we're telling a story of it is a horror movie. It's terrifying, but it's more just to explain kind of what happened on that day.
Yeah, and when you're mixing genres like that, as you said, there are elements of horror, but this is a drama, and it's telling this really quite upsetting real life event that happened. So how
Mm-hmm.
challenging is it for you to kind of mix those genres? Or is that quite a natural thing for you knowing what to expect going in?
Yeah, you kind of get the gist reading it,
Mm.
but you don't really understand the full scope until you're filming and talking with Burke. And when I was offered the role, Burke and I had a great conversation about it, and discussing Roy and Julie and kind of that relationship and how it wanted to go. And and when you're on set, you're not really thinking about that. You're kind of just going through the scene and what he's experiencing prior to the scene and in the scene, and kind of when you get in that mode, or at least when I get in that mode, I'm not even thinking about that.
Yeah, for sure. And of course, with this being set in the 1960s, was there anything you particularly enjoyed about, going back, whether it was the fashion or just kind of exploring that world without
Yeah,
the
no, I mean the
technology?
fashion, the fashion and the truck we driving was the coolest thing ever. When Roy and Julia were first introduced. But you had to be very careful of the words you used,
Yeah.
especially during that time. You can't say modern stuff. So which was kind of tough for me. There was a few times I was like, oh, can't say that.
Oh, that's awesome. And you mentioned the nighttime scenes as well, but were they particularly more difficult for you than the daytime ones, particularly as obviously the attack happens at night? So was that a little bit harder for you in a lot of ways going out there at night?
Well, it was more hard because I had after the attack. There's all the prosthetic on my back
Yeah.
with a bunch of blood, and when we filmed, it was really cold because we're at high elevation in the mountains, and it got really cold. So the only issue I kind of dealt with was just during the scenes and during filming, I had wet, sticky, freezing stuff all over my arms and back, which is fine. I mean, we had heaters and stuff. But yeah, no, I mean, obviously, like going back on what I said before, I've always been terrified of bears, so filming any of those scenes related to the attack was always a little bit scary, for sure.
Yeah, and I always like asking about the fake blood because it seems every actor I speak to,
Mhm.
they say what an absolute nightmare it is. It's sticky, it's just can't get rid of it. So was that your experience, obviously having to play this poor guy who's just been mauled by this bear?
No, I mean, we had a fantastic makeup team, and they were the sweetest. And thankfully, it was just one prosthetic. It was on the back shoulder, the back right shoulder. But no, I mean, you'd have it on for 10 hours at night and get it off when the morning kind of hit, and all you would have to do is take like a 45-minute shower and it's off. Obviously, it wasn't fun, having it on during, but that's kind of what you have to do to get that movie magic.
Yeah, and to have a prosthetic like that on for such a long time kind of helps with your transformation as well, I guess, into this character and to
Well,
kind
yeah,
of portray.
for sure. You can't see it when they're putting it on, but you go in the mirror and see all the blood on you. Like, this is terrifying, terrifying to look at.
Crazy. And just what I've got you, Matt. Obviously, you're in Miss Marvel. You can probably see from my background that big Marvel fan. So,
Yep.
have you heard anything about Bruno coming back to reunite with Miss Marvel? We keep hearing about the Young Avengers showing up somewhere, but
Yep.
Have you heard
Yeah,
anything?
so the, stuff like that, I can't say too much. I haven't heard anything to right now, but if I did, they have a red laser pointed at my head, because you know how they are, and
Yeah.
I'm so excited for Doom and all that stuff to come. I think it's gonna be awesome.
Yeah, for sure. And going back to Miss Marvel, that mutation scene, when it obviously aired, we had that little bit of
Yep.
X-Men theme in the background. Did you know at
Yep.
the time how momentous that was going to be? Because it just blew
Yes.
up afterwards.
Yeah. So we did that in reshoots, and I had that wasn't originally in the script. And when we went back and refilmed it, they didn't even give me sides. I didn't know what the scene was. Like, so you're doing this scene. I'm like, okay, that's great. I need the lines so I could prep the lines. And they're like, well, we can't really say too much. So they gave me like a rough draft of it, but they held the mutation bit out. And I was like, what is going on? And when they told me that only a few of us knew on set, I was literally like, holy. And I was shocked. And when we went filming to that scene, it made me so much more nervous because like I knew the momentum of the X-Men and all that stuff, the mutants and stuff. So it was really cool.
Yeah, and just looking back on that show, it's still the best reviewed Marvel TV show.
Mm-hmm.
And there's been some great ones since then, but it really stands out above all of them, I think, in a lot of ways. So it must have been a special experience to be part of telling that story and just playing a character like Bruno, who I think came across really well and obviously has a big fan base now as well.
Oh, thank you so much. Of course. And another show that has a beautiful message of inclusivity and all of that stuff. It was such a blast, and I'm still good friends with all those people on that show, and we all love each other, and we're super blessed with all the fans and the reviews we got for it, and we're really happy about that for sure.
Yeah, well, fingers crossed for season two somewhere down the line.
Fingers crossed.
But back to this one, I know you've mentioned Burke a few times, and I do want to give him his due because this is a really, I think the way he handles everything with this film is just really very special with the, as you said, the horror, the drama. But what was it like
Yeah,
to collaborate with him and obviously figuring out who Roy was beyond what we know about the real Roy DeCat?
Burke is the most friendly person I've ever met. And working with him on set's a whole nother thing. He's such a collaborator, which is why I do what I do. I love acting because I love to collaborate with other actors, other creators. And even on our first day, I mean, I had kind of a few ideas on how I wanted to play the pain of the bear biting into me and kind of that type of stuff. And him just having full trust in me. That there's sometimes people don't really have trust in their actors, and that's kind of where things get a little sticky. But Burke was so trusting in me, and I was so trusting in him, and it kind of was this great relationship that we were able to share together.
Yeah, for sure. And just one final question for you. I without getting into spoilers, obviously at the end of the film, there's some title cards about how, people responded to the attack and quite
Yeah.
shocking and quite haunting. So did this one really stick with you after to step into Roy's shoes and just to see the way that nature versus humanity kind of battle played out after that, after what the tragedy that happened?
Well, of course, no. I mean, you see reports, sadly, sometimes of attacks happening to people, and kind of go in that world of what if this happened to me, and it happened to Roy, which made it hit even harder. It was definitely interesting. It's a weird feeling to go through, and you kind of just have to take a breath and be like, okay, we're putting this on screen. It didn't really happen, but we want to honor Roy and Julie and everyone involved, and even further than that, just how they approached bears and camping after that was definitely different.
Yeah, for sure. Well, Matt,
Mhm.
thank you so much for taking the time. As I said, big
Of
fan
course,
of
Josh.
yours. Going back to The Walking Dead, Miss Marvel, I thought you were great in this film.
Thank
So,
you so much, man.
and I think people are going to love seeing what you do with this one because it's very different from those kind of comic book roles that you've done. And yeah,
Yeah, I think
fantastic.
so too. Yeah. Thank you.
Awesome chatting with you. Nice to meet you, Matt. Thank you.
Nice to meet you too, dude.